Hey everyone, it's Joe here, and in this lesson we're looking at falling off the weight loss wagon and how to get back up. Okay, so what we'll cover today is going off the rails, okay, damage control, pressing pause on your goals, micro excuses, the no tracking trap, don't be your own bully, and then getting back on track. Okay, so going off the rails. I'm sure we've all been there. You're cruising along, you're following your plan, you're doing everything right and starting to see some results, which feels great. The next thing you know, one scoop of ice cream turns into a whole tub, one slice of pizza turns into 6, or, you blink and one glass of wine turns into an empty bottle on the table, and you're suddenly banging your head against the wall wondering how this happened and where you went wrong. And then you start to beat yourself up. I was doing so well, now I'm back at square one. Like, why did I do that? I'm never going to lose the weight and get to my goal. Now, this can either lead to a person giving up entirely or attempting to, start again until the next relapse happens. And this pattern continues. So why does this happen? Look, it happens to everyone. Sometimes as a conscious decision, sometimes through neglect, and sometimes through defeat. Okay, it's important to understand what is happening when you go off the rails, okay? Now, at your best, you decided to make a change, to take the first step towards reaching your goals, right? You made a plan for that change and you actually stuck with it for some amount of time. You've been following a meal plan, tracking your diet, feeling better and seeing results, right? Now, as you begin to veer off the rails, you're taking your past progress and your unrealized future progress and putting that at risk. This has to happen sometimes. It's part of doing something that's challenging, right? It's part of growing, self-development. It doesn't mean that it's a good thing when it happens, of course, but it's a sign you're actually tackling challenges that are big enough to challenge you. That's how personal growth occurs, right? So no matter how disciplined you are, you're going to find yourself in this situation from time to time. So don't beat yourself up. So now I want to talk about what actually happens when we go off the rails or, fall off the wagon, so to speak. So when we make a conscious decision to kind of go off course, we can call these lapses, which basically means a temporary failure of concentration or memory, or in this case, judgment. And there are two that occur when we break our diet or, go off the rails there. The first is an acute lapse. Now, these can occur because of your mindset and because you're being too strict on yourself, or by having a deprivation mindset. And when you can't take it anymore, you lose it and you go off the rails. Now, this always happens with any fad, restrictive diet, or quick fix thing. Stress is another big factor that can cause acute lapses though. If you've had a really stressful day in the office and you're fighting with your spouse, or your kids are just driving you bonkers, and so you reach for a bar of chocolate as a way to cope, I guess, and then suddenly you devour the whole block without blinking. And then the next one is a chronic relapse. This can be harder to identify or pinpoint because they occur over time without us realizing. Somewhere along the line, you kind of loosened up. It can be hard to pinpoint when, but suddenly you're snacking a lot more, not on a banana, or your dinner plate portion size slowly gets bigger, or you now find yourself going back for that second helping, even though you might not be that hungry, and you've kind of given up. You're still kind of following the diet and kind of not. And this is usually related to a loss of motivation or losing sight of the end goal, or not fully appreciating how far you've come already. So you've got to know your triggers in this instance. So when you lapse, it's important to stop, pick yourself up and reflect on why it happened. Okay, was it because of stress, emotions, your environment, the influence of others? For example, if you're traveling for work, or you don't order room service or go out instead to find a better alternative or healthier option, or don't feel the need to finish your kids' leftover fries at lunch, have have something else instead, or just stick with your own meal. Or if you reach for a bar of chocolate when you feel stressed, make a cocoa smoothie or like a hot chocolate or something to satisfy the craving without having all the same amount of calories. Now, knowing your triggers can help you to make a plan of attack to stop it happening again next time. So if you already have a contingency plan in place, when the time comes and you're tempted to relapse or go off the rails, you have a plan or an option already in place that you can fall back on to make it easier to stay on track. So often when we decide to go off the rails, we think, oh well, if I'm going to go off the rails, I may as well go way off. If I'm going to eat this ice cream, I might as well eat the whole tub. If I'm going to get takeaway with my kids, I might as well get the extra large meal. Things like that. It never seems to be a small deviation, but always, a major blowout, going way off the rails, which may feel good at the time and probably satisfy a few cravings for an hour, but it always leaves us feeling disappointed in ourselves and with that awful feeling that we are back at square one, having ruined all the progress we've worked on. Now, this all or nothing mentality plagues us in different parts of our life. Diet is almost always one of them. So I want you to think about, do you kind of take an all or nothing approach with this? Now, in that moment where you realize you're going off the rails, the first thing you should think about is how you're going to get back on afterwards. This is your first line of defense for not completely breaking the habit or diet. Remember, you are in control of how far off the rails you go. You are the conductor here at all times. The next thing to realize is that you're temporarily retreating. You're not surrendering, okay? You haven't been defeated. So there's a big difference here. So it is normal to deviate from the plan sometimes, to fall off the wagon a little bit, occasionally. That's normal. Forgive yourself. That's okay. Dust yourself off. Get back on track. Now, with that in mind, understand that the further you deviate, or the bigger the blowout or the lapse, the harder it's going to be to get back on track. If you're at a point where you're going off the rails, it's a tough habit, it's important not to make it more difficult than it needs to be. If you just deviate from your plan slightly, that makes it so much easier to get back on track. So we need to limit how far we fall off. Or as I always like to call it, take a damage control kind of mentality. So what do I mean by damage control? Well, think about it this way. Say you're in a calorie deficit by 200 calories each day on average. It's not going to be the same every day, but on average, you're in a 200 calorie deficit for a full month, 30 days. So you've created a 6,000 calorie deficit for the month. If you then completely go off the rails for a week and you eat and drink, say, on average, 850 calories over your budget on each of the 7 days that week, which is very, very simple to do, might I add, then just that week negates the deficit you made that whole previous month. A full 30 days effort is gone in an instant because you went so far off track. So keep that into perspective. This is why we want to just limit the damage. So if you're feeling like you want to, devour a block of chocolate because of stress or something like that, go back to your trigger list. Try some distractions. Take a few deep breaths. Go for a walk around the block. Get up and have a glass of water or have a tea instead first. Chew some gum. Go and brush your teeth. Do anything first to see if you can get rid of that temptation, of that desire. You've got to be the conductor and take back control. Limit the damage before you go too far off the rails. Now look, getting to your goal, the life you want, it's going to be 2 steps forward, 1 step back. That's just life, right? Like this quote says, I have to strive to go 2 steps forward and realize that sometimes there will be 1 step back. So when you see yourself going off the rails and you can't resist it, due to circumstances or willpower, limit just how far you fall. A small deviation can be enough to get through a bad time or to vent a bit, and that's okay. And can be just a minor detour rather than a one-way trip to failure, all the way back to the start. Now, I want to talk about this idea of pausing your goals when things get overwhelming or wanting to start fresh. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about is pressing pause on your goals. Now, there's this idea that you can just pause your health goal when things are overwhelming or you're wanting to start fresh when things haven't gone as planned, when you aren't reaching those goals. And of course, this leads people to go way off track, and most never make it back. So pressing pause might go something like this, okay? I will start again when I'm not as stressed, when my mum or partner is healthier, or when I'm feeling happier, or when the kids are back in school, when I get back from this holiday. Now, it's totally normal to start again, take some time to regroup, and then resume or start over again when life feels easier. But I'm here to tell you that this is the biggest way to sabotage your goals and plans for weight loss. And that's because having this attitude only builds the skill of pausing and procrastinating. It allows you to have a break from what has been a really tough and challenging journey. Listen, I get it. Losing weight is not easy. It requires patience and persistence. And the idea of starting fresh later on sounds really alluring and relieving, lets you off the hook. Especially when things get complicated, when you feel stressed or overwhelmed, or, I don't know, you're starting a new job or you're moving house. The list goes on and on. It sounds so tempting to say, like, I'll just start over when things get easier. I'll do better next time. But let me ask you this. Would you pause other things in your life because they got challenging? You can't press pause on being a mother or a father. You can't typically press pause on your relationship, even though most of us have thought about it. If you've had a stressful month at work, you can't walk up to your boss and ask, hey, can I have a pause? You have to make it work. During this period, you're still a parent, a partner, an employee. So why do we think it's reasonable to press pause on our health? Why press pause on your health? This program doesn't have a pause option. The point is, I want to teach you skills like the skill of losing weight and staying there at your goal, the skill of finishing what you started, reaching your goals in the midst of a busy, complicated, messy life, a life in the real world. You have to be able to do that. You've come so far, invested so much in the progress you've made. I don't want to let you throw that away, because when things get complicated and life isn't perfect, which, let's face it, is most of the time, we think if we take a break, things will be different when you come back. The reality is, nothing's different. Life continues to happen. The next challenge is just going to come up. And then what? You're going to pause again. Now, I actually pressed pause on my own health once, and I'm not going to do that again. I made heaps of excuses for it. Almost lost relationships that I value. Now, saying it again, I'm not going to push you in that direction by letting you hit the pause button. So, in November 2017, that's when I realized I was prioritizing the wrong things. I found this low-quality photo among my old Instagram posts, but I thought I'd share it with you anyways. Now, I know I wasn't, so me on the left is November 2017, and then April 2018 on the right. Now, I know I wasn't super fat or anything, but I was not in a body I was confident or comfortable in, and I had several issues that the picture doesn't show. For example, loads of stress that affected my relationship with my partner, bad IBS and just overall bad digestive health. And at the time I made up excuses for why I didn't do anything for my health or prioritize it. I don't have time to meal plan. I don't have time to go to the gym. These were things I used to tell myself and others since I'd started. I'd started an online business. My mental health was just not a priority at all. And I used to make these, I guess they're called micro excuses, because they allowed me to shift responsibility elsewhere. And this creates a false narrative in your head. Humans love the I don't have time mindset, since it excuses you of responsibility. It's the easiest way out. That's just human nature, right? Now, if you reframe this excuse and instead of saying, I don't have time, you say, I won't make time. Because, it's not important enough for me, essentially. Now, all of a sudden, you're forced to own the choice you make. There's nobody else to blame. It's your choice. People always make time for the things that are important to them. Always, always. Now, I spoke about this reframing in one of the first lessons of this program, and I wanted to touch on it again because it's so important. It's about taking responsibility. And it's not just important when we're starting, but it's important for keeping the momentum too when things get tough. When you're falling off the wagon. So these days I catch myself mid-sentence saying, I don't have time. And I correct myself. I literally will be saying, I don't, and I'll stop mid-sentence and I'll be like, I won't make time. If I'm going to be honest with you, whoever I'm talking to, I'm not going to make time for it. Because I guess it's not that important to me. Look, if it's something you simply don't care about, then fair enough. Yeah, you're not going to do it. You're never going to make time for it because you don't care. But when it comes to your health, it is probably something you should be doing, but you don't. So in the end, if it's important to you, you'll make time. I didn't realize at that time how health is so related to other things that I valued in life. I'd put both my mental and physical health aside and did not realize how it was affecting others around me and relationships I care about as well. It wasn't just about me. My health wasn't just about me. Think about that. Is your health just about you? What about your family members? Your parents or your spouse or your kids? It's about them. Now, in the caption for this Instagram post I wrote, in these past 5 months, my gut health is 10 times better. I have more energy. I feel way more confident and better about myself. And I get more work done during fewer hours. And so, the new habits I had sort of adopted, they became a lifestyle that I'm still living today, I'm proud to say. I kind of went off the rails for a while there, but I got back on. I fell off the wagon, I got back up. You can do it too. So, anyway, the point is the I don't have time excuse that we managed to fashion up is actually what's called a micro excuse. Okay? I find these really fascinating. So micro excuses are little excuses that we tell ourselves to rationalize having a lapse, essentially. So often they can feel so small, like just a little decision, or when we're influenced by others, that they can be easier to make. And there are some other common micro excuses that you might relate to. So, things like it's only for one day. Well, the bottle is already open. My friends, my partner, my family think I'm boring because I never have a drink with them. It's my best friend's birthday. It would be rude not to have, a piece of cake or 3. And I'm all for having that piece of cake, but it's when we're going back again and again and again. That's when it doesn't align with the goals. This one, it's the weekend. I can start fresh on Monday. Wow, that one is the cause of many unhappy people. So once we start making these micro excuses, it can become easier and easier to lapse and move into chronic relapsing, moving us further and further away from our goals or making it easier to justify going off the rails later on. So when this happens, that's when you become stuck, spinning your wheels, and you stay stuck. Okay, so the last thing I want to talk about in this lesson of falling off the weight loss wagon is the no tracking trap. And this is for those of you who track your calories, okay? I've seen this pattern many, many times. When people start to go off the rails slightly, they stop tracking everything 100% honestly. So it kind of goes like this. Yay, I've had awesome results and I feel great. Oh no, the pizza night got a bit out of hand. Oh, I feel embarrassed. I might just skip today and I'll just track tomorrow. I just won't even track it today. And then, since I'm having the day off, I might as well have a drink as well. I'm not tracking that pizza, so I'm just gonna have some drinks. Oh, why not the whole bottle? Maybe some chips as well, crisps, some ice cream for dessert, and then at the end of the day, when all things said and done, the person's wondering why they haven't lost any weight that month. So don't sweep it under the rug. This data of tracking when you have gone off the rails a bit, that's more important than when you are on track. Because at least you'll see the reason you may not have gotten the results you anticipated. Okay, and it also makes us just be honest. It helps remove the guilt because you're not hiding it. It's when you hide things, when you eat in private, that's when you feel more guilty or ashamed. Look, we all have days like this. It's just important that we try to learn from it and move on and get on with life. And as I mentioned earlier, when I was talking about damage control, you can be in a deficit for weeks, but in just 1 or 2 days off the rails, this will undo all that work, okay? Okay, and look, in wrapping up for this lesson, let's face it, you are bound to fall off the wagon a little bit at some point, okay? When this happens, just remember, learn from the experience, use kindness. Forgive yourself, not guilt, to reflect on why it happened, okay? How to avoid it happening again. So, in other words, don't be your own bully. Failure is part of the journey, guys. Forgive yourself that it has happened and then move on. Redouble your efforts to get back on track and learn from that experience to safeguard you from falling off the wagon next time. Life isn't perfect and we can't expect to be either. Remember that in the grand scheme of things, it was a very tiny moment, like in the grand scheme of your life, and you have the rest of that day or week or month or year to be aware and treat yourself better and get back on track. And I really like this little image here, and it applies to success, right? Weight loss, health, everything in life that's worthwhile, basically, and everything that takes time, essentially. And we like to think that success looks like this straight line, the picture on the left, but it's much closer to the the squiggly, messy line on the right. So it's we still want to be going in the right direction, but expect all those twists and turns. It's part of the process. There's no way around it. Okay, so to recap, we looked at, going off the rails, damage control in particular. When you do go off the rails, you are the conductor here. You're calling the shots. Pressing pause on your goals and how we do that with health, but not in other areas of our life, and that's something we need to really reconsider. Micro excuses, I don't have time versus I won't make time. We looked at the no tracking trap and also to not be your own bully. Forgive yourself. It's okay. You're only human. And then we get back on track. The last thing I'll say is remember that falling off the weight loss wagon or going off the rails, it happens to everyone, okay? Focus on finding your motivation again. When you first started this program, how did you feel? What was motivating you then? Revisit that first lesson, one of the lessons I have in Module 1 about commitment and goal setting. Oftentimes we forget why we're here and why it's important. So let's recreate that desire you had when you first started. Pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and let's get you back on track because you are worth it. Okay, that's all for this lesson. I'll see you in the next one.